Here we go. Welcome to the Transform with Travel podcast, where we share stories of personal transformation and life lessons through our experiences of traveling and exploring the world. Travel is the ultimate accelerator for personal growth, and it can be the root catalyst for the pivots and plot twists we make in our lives. I'm your host, Kelly Tolliday, and it's my mission to inspire you to live life to its fullest, travel with an open mind and heart, and let the world show you a new perspective. I'm so grateful you're here with us today, so let's dive right in. Happy exploring. Welcome to the Transform with Travel podcast. I have Darren Jonathon here with me from all the way over in Australia, and I am so excited to be having this conversation with him today. Darren is a dual citizen and an expat who made the decision to move to Australia more than 12 years ago. And he started the blog and Instagram Average Joe Down Under to help other expats down under or those wanting to make the move to be able to create a community who could learn from his experiences. And we were just talking backstage about how I could have really benefited from a resource like this 8 years ago when I moved back. 8 years ago now. Wow, crazy.
Yeah.
9 years ago. Whoa, 9 years ago, actually, when I moved to Australia. So it actually would have been so helpful for me to have a resource like this. You talk about visas, you talk about places to live, you talk about places to find jobs. And I just think it's so amazing. So welcome. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your story today.
Oh, thank you very much. I think thankfully we connected, and I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
Yeah, like Instagram actually did its job and connected like-minded people instead of just sending you
For
absolute trash. Yeah. So I would love to start. What brought you to Australia? Just start with your journey about your, love affair with Australia and how you wanted to move there.
Yeah, well, I suppose it's very different to most people that move here in the sense that it's very similar to most people at the very beginning, where I came as a working holiday visa holder, like you, I think, as well.
Yes. Yep.
You come and you do the whole travel thing. I came in 2010, did the whole, went to uni, didn't know what to do with my life. Let's go and experience Australia in 2010. So midway through 2010, I kind of had what I refer to as like a little epiphany, or a kind of, or as some people like to say, a breakdown. I just didn't know where to go in my life, and I felt very lost. And I think that led to the epiphany, which I still call it that, and then realized what I wanted to do with my life, which was be an educator. And I thought that the best place for me to do that was at home, which is originally from Northern Ireland, if you can't tell from the accent. And so obviously, leaving your home country and coming to a new city and all was totally terrifying. So I kind of made the decision then in 2010 to move back. And then that led to, the financial crisis that was happening at the time. There was so many other factors, which then drew me back again in 2012 to actually study as an international student, which, I think there's only a couple 100,000 people who are international students at the time. So obviously over the years it's grown, and, with COVID has dipped again. But, at that time, I didn't really know a lot of international students. There wasn't a big community, especially from Ireland or the UK, really. So it was a bit of a change. Very, very different.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So that's how I end up sort of being here at the very beginning. And then that started from 2012. I've been here ever since. Obviously, things have happened throughout that whole time that has led me to where I am now, to really put this blog and this Instagram and share my experiences from these last 13 years, really.
Yeah, amazing. And so you said you're from Northern Ireland, which is awesome. We went to Belfast last summer with my daughter, our 20-month daughter. So we did the hop on, hop off bus and went all around. But from what I gather from the history and just talking to a lot of the people who have lived there, and we have friends who are from Belfast as well. And it's from emerging from, all of the crisis that was going on for so many years, it seems to have been what I'm hearing from friends is that it's relatively isolated, and that it's very, not trusting of the community is not very trusting of other cultures or other ways of being. And so I don't know if that's something that you experienced. How was that for you, going from such a, maybe maybe it's not the right word, but coming from such an isolated community, moving over to Australia, which is so many different diverse cultures and so many different types of people all living in one space? What was that like for you?
I think you hit the nail on the head when you said isolated. Like, I felt isolated just because of the nature of Northern Ireland itself. We were pretty closed off from the world itself. Luckily, I was from a family who loved to travel, so we used to go to the States quite often, travel Europe. Luckily, that was my outlet, was like travel. Travel was my escape from reality. Things you could list all the stuff that happened in your childhood, like, going to school and getting told that there's a bomb in the school and having to leave. There's so many things that happened when growing up, but they weren't as bad as what had previously happened in the 70s, 80s, Being in school in the 90s and the early 2000s, it was still relatively secluded from the outside world. People who came, like, I had friends who would ask, do you get shot when you go outside your house? Just stuff that people don't really understand that happen on a daily basis, that never really, like, over the years has changed and evolved and people have moved on, but there's still that sort of, it was felt very isolated, and it wasn't really accepting of other cultures. They've got better as with most countries, but going from there, so not living anywhere overseas and then having to go to a country that's totally different was a huge change. It was like night and day, like going from like nearly 100% white culture, with very little multiculturalism, to a country which embraces multiculturalism and like has suburbs full of, like, as you know, like Italian food, like Thai food, and like Chinese, like people have their own culture and bring their food and their culture with them, was completely foreign. So that just led to a few years of confusion and homesickness and a bunch of other feelings that I suppose are what you call culture shock when you look into the psychology of it. So yeah, very different.
And so when you first came over to Australia, not first came over, but when you first kind of did your first stint in Australia, your first work on the working holiday visa, what was that like in terms of, how did Australia get its hook inside of you? Like what did you fall in love with in terms of your first time really living over there?
That's a really good question, because I think the people, just having diverse friends and having a mindset that wasn't the same as what I was used to, but also the weather. Like, you can't deny the weather, and the beaches are unreal, like unparalleled to most places in the world. Like, you've got the whitest sand apparently in the world down the south coast, like 3 hour drive. Things that you just can never put into words sometimes. Walking past the Opera House and just like seeing that for the first time, and then going, wow, we don't have any of that in Belfast, and I think just everything seems lovely when it has the sunshine, and has the weather. I think people gravitate towards that because there's just so much positivity when there's sunshine, and it's just a natural human effect.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I remember when I was living in Sydney, and I think we had like 3 or 4 weeks straight of rain, and everyone was like, what is this feeling I'm feeling? Am I feeling sad?
Yeah.
And I was like, the rest of the world lives with this all the time. We just have a lot of
Yeah.
sun here.
Yeah,
And
that's right.
I'm from Florida, and it's also beautiful weather, but it rains a lot. And Sydney is just so, what it used to be is so dry, and not a lot of rain. I know that the climate's changing a little bit down there too. But when you did your working holiday visa and you decided, okay, I want to make this work somehow, I'm going to come back to study. Was that hard to break that news to your family that you were going to move back over there? What was kind of the general conversation happening in your own internal community at that time?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm very lucky. My family have always been super supportive, and luckily we come from, we like to travel a little bit. We like to be out and about and see the world. So I don't think it was like kind of hard to do that, but I feel like going back there the second time, there was a lot more emotions because it was more permanent than just working holiday, because
Mm,
at least I knew I was going for 1 to 2 years. And obviously, when you're a student, international student, it's expensive and there's not a lot of money. So it wasn't as if like I was potentially coming home for a long time or multiple times per year. And that led to probably some, not fights, but I suppose strained relationships, because you're on edge and you're feeling homesick and you don't know how to
mm.
process it. So you kind of take it out on those people that you love. But obviously they were super supportive, and like, you, even when you go through hard times, you still got them saying like, you can do this, which was probably the biggest factor why I have stayed so long. because in my head I've never really accepted the fact that, you know, I'm here for good, which I think a lot of expats do.
Yeah, I can agree to that. I think like you said, just even walking past the opera house, you're like, wait, I'm here. I'm living
Mm.
here. I'm this is my life. And so it's amazing that your family was so supportive. I asked that question because that is such a big factor of why a lot of people don't take those leaps or don't move to the country they want to move to or start a new chapter in their life, is because family or friends or just the general, talk about town is sometimes less supportive than what you would want. It In your experience of now having had so many conversations with expats and really been a leader in this space, especially in Sydney, what would you say as a piece of advice for somebody who is kind of butting up against that unsupportive or negative feedback from their communities at home?
Yeah, I was actually going to give you an example of that that's happened recently. I feel like people come to me and say, "Oh, by the way, I really want to move, but my family's not supportive or my partner's not supportive. I really don't have any support from family. Will I be alone in Sydney? I don't want to go from having friends to no friends." And those are my support network. Look, for me personally, if I don't do something, I will always have that regret. I have to do it. It will never leave me until I actually do it. And then I say to
Mm,
myself, like, was it worth it? You know, I obviously have to weigh up the positives and negatives. When it comes to family, it really depends on individual situations. I always say you never know where your life's going to take you, who you're going to meet, what's coming next if you don't take the risk. And you never grow as a person if you're always in your comfort zone, because the risks and the rewards always in the uncomfortable. And like, I think I've learned that over the years. Like, if I've never taken this step, would I be financially independent? No. Would I still be a slave to my 40-year-old mortgage at home? Yes. And would I still be with the same friends that, you know, right now probably would have? But when I'm sitting here talking to you today, probably 10 of them have dropped off my life since those 13 years. You know, were they actually really friends? Like, there's so many things can change your life. Like, and I probably wouldn't be where I was today if it wasn't just to take that one risk of saying I'm going to go. And you don't know who you meet. Like, your future friends, your partner, whatever, could be in another country. Or, you know, I do sympathize with people who want to leave but their partner doesn't, because that is a hard situation.
mm,
But I always feel like you can always do temporary and give it a go, and then if it doesn't work out, you can always move back. You know, you can always keep things open ended, which I think a lot of people are doing now, especially after COVID. A lot of people have been saying to me, "Oh, we're coming for a year to test it out to see if we even like it because my partner's not too sure." And I think it's an individual conversation, but I think if you don't have the conversation, you'll never know. So I say even have the conversation and then come to a decision as a family. Or if you're solo, I say just do it. Just do it.
yeah. 100%. And what you had just said, mentioned at the end there is that it's nothing is permanent. You can always decide this didn't work out for me and I can go home, because home will always be there. And so if home is always going to be there, then why not just try and make it a 3-month test or a year-long test? My husband and I, we decided to teach English in Thailand, and we did it for 2 or 3 months, and we decided this is not what we thought it was going to be, and we quit and we went traveling for a whole nother year. And that's okay. Like, you're allowed to change your mind, you're allowed to pivot. And I think that's what COVID did offer a lot of people, was
Mm.
that time of reevaluating, the time of a lot of companies and a lot of travel policies are now really flexible. So I do think that had a big factor in that as well.
Yeah, actually, on that point, I feel like people, with especially after COVID, have become a lot more open to the uncomfortable situation because they've been in the uncomfortable of being stuck. And a lot of people have realized that. I've met people recently, actually last night, who are nearly 40, who have always been stuck in the same thing for the last 20 years, the same job, the same friends, the same life. And they've got to a point where they're like that, hit that, like what they're telling me is a midlife crisis. And they've just moved here, it was a couple of weeks ago, and just saying, like, we can't believe that we didn't do this 10 years ago. You know, and I feel like they maybe have some sort of regret not doing it. I feel like, you know, you never want to live to the point where you're like, why did I? What if? Like, what if that?
Mhm.
What if I changed my life? Like, you can always make it not permanent. You can always move back. So there's always and I feel like people need to know there's always a way. There's always a way.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's always a way, and with resources like yours, it does make it feel like, okay, I'm not alone. Somebody else has walked this path. Because honestly, as an expat, as someone who I came over on a working holiday visa first, I did that for a year. We left to go teach English, and then we came back, and then I got sponsored through my job with a 457 visa, and then we were going through the process of maybe looking at a partner visa, and it is just so overwhelming to be like, all right, where do I need to start? What visa works for me? There's 10 different websites telling me 10 different things. I don't know where to find an apartment, like all these different things, and you're just like, this is so overwhelming. I don't even know where to start. So having someone like yourself being able to say, hey, there's a community of expats, there's a community of people who want to move abroad, who want to move to Australia. These are the resources that I can provide to you, and just really sharing your own experiences and your own mistakes along the way to help somebody. So I really appreciate that, as some like my past self would have really loved that resource.
Yeah,
And
thank
so
you.
you mentioned in your story that you kind of went through a little bit of that homesickness, and there was a little bit of, that period where you realized, okay, wait, I'm here for the long haul. And then you started to kind of be aware of missing home. And so I can definitely relate to that, because there always there's that initial joy of like, wow, I did it. I'm here. This is amazing. And then you make a million friends, and then you realize, wait, I don't need all these friends. I might have been rushing that too fast. This friendship's not going to work for me. And then you're kind of sitting alone being like, shoot, I don't know if this is right. And I don't know, that was my experience. So I'd love for you to kind of talk a little bit, if you would like to, a little bit about that homesickness period for you, because I think being honest about that is part of the process as an expat, so that somebody doesn't jump the gun and move home too early because they are going through that phase.
I feel, again, that's exactly the experience of most expats, and especially me. You get so lonely at certain times, especially when you go through homesickness. I had never experienced what homesickness was ever in my life, obviously. When
Mm.
you're living and you're comfortable, you never have it. So whenever I sort of started to experience it, I thought it was like maybe anxiety or something like mental health wise. Obviously, in the end, when I did therapy, I realized that it's a mixture of a few things like anxiety, mild depression, loneliness. All those things sort of come up because your demons come out, your past traumas come out when you're uncomfortable. And I think a lot of people, our expats, aren't ready for that. But anyway, when I was going through this journey of homesickness, anyway, it started probably after uni, so probably about 2013, and lasted up until before COVID. And I think the reason it stopped was because I accepted that I couldn't change the situation and always going to have two homes. And it doesn't matter which one I live in, I can live in both and still be unhappy. I need to choose to be happy. And I think also therapy really helped, obviously. But I think during those times, like I uncontrollable crying for 45 minutes, something that's not like I did not feel like I was myself at all.
Mm.
Things I couldn't explain, like my brain was playing tricks on me. I was so lonely at certain times, having these really strong feelings of crying and then really upset. I would go walk the city and just be like, I need to make friends. And then when I started to meet people, I was like, I don't even like these people, but I just need to have connection. And then that then maybe like some people will send them down a dark path of doing stuff that they usually wouldn't do as in their own personalities, because they
Mm.
got the freedom of not being at home in their comfortable situation, and it can lead to what we've seen as some devastating effects. I did the same thing. I was probably socializing, drinking far too much, like just not. That's not like I've never drank that much in my life. And I think the culture and the people you're with really dictate how you end up acting. And it just wasn't me. And I feel like then, as you kind of go to therapy or you start to work things out for yourself, you realize that these people or your life needs to change in certain aspects. And therefore, hence, I was able to change some of those things, thank the Lord. But yeah, it's definitely not easy for expats because when you're dealing with homesickness, it can manifest in multiple different ways. As I said, anxiety, depression, loneliness. But again, I feel like you segregate yourself from people when you're going through those hard times when you should be doing the opposite. And I think it's about recognizing when you're at that point where you need to like stop it. Otherwise, you end up go home too early, and you could have made much more of the experience.
Yeah. No, I relate to that so much. And I do think it's not necessarily a Sydney problem, but
Mm.
there is such a like a nightlife drinking culture in
Yeah.
Australia. So it is really easy to get wrapped up in. I worked in media for a few years, and if you know anything about the media industry is in Sydney and New York, no matter where you are, there's a lot of that can happen. So like you said, it can manifest in a lot of different ways. It could be really detrimental to not just your mental health, but also your physical health if you don't
Yeah.
have people looking out for you.
And I was going to say, like, if you're experiencing homesickness and you're drinking, like, uncontrollably drinking, like, every day, because that's the culture here is to, like, go out for drinks with people after work, as you would know,
Yes.
like, Fridays, Saturdays, Sundays, Sunday day drinking. Like, if your mental health is bad, drinking will just add another layer of problems to yourself because you're not dealing with actual problems, you're escaping them. And I think, that's another conversation for another time, but it just adds another layer of problem to your life. It could be drinking, it could be gambling, it could be, going out and meeting people, like, randomly hook up. Like, there's so many things that it can lead to because you're so lonely and you're desperate for connection. And as expats, that's a really hard way to balance because you can either go either or. You really have to find your tribe.
Yeah, and it's like finding that balance. Like you said, when you are feeling those feelings of homesickness and that could spiral into anxiety or depression, the natural tendency is to isolate, or the natural tendency is to just rush out and connect with anyone. And oftentimes we're trying to just fill a void within us using substances or alcohol or other people. And so I say all of this not to scare anyone off from
No.
this process. It's just to say, like, there is like, it's almost like a 5-step process to finally landing and feeling like this is my home, and going through that homesickness, or at least just appreciating a part of having people around you and appreciating your family or appreciating your home country. It's a part of the process for you to be able to move into the next stage of acceptance or whatever it is. But yeah, I do appreciate you sharing that, because I think a lot of times people don't want to be uncomfortable,
And
and
people
as
don't
soon
talk
as
about it.
they exactly. Exactly. And people don't want to feel that uncomfortable feeling. And so as soon as they feel that homesickness, it's like, oh no, I'm going to just book my ticket and go home. And it's like, wait. This is part of the process. You don't just move overseas and the problems or the mental health or anything that was happening at home doesn't just go away. Now you have to deal with it in this new country.
Yeah.
And luckily there are a lot of groups, there are a lot of professional support. There's a lot of community groups for expats, especially in Sydney. So speaking of community groups, have you found that you've trended towards the Irish community in Sydney, which is really strong? Or have you found that you've kind of stayed away because that's what you've known your whole life? What does that look like?
I think, to be honest, at the start, I was really anti going to any sort of group because I came from such a small minded, narrow sort of way of looking at things. I didn't really want to come back to that. Like, I had left that home and I did not want to make those friends right here in Sydney and live through them about like all the stuff back home because I just wanted to separate myself and actually meet real people that were going through similar things that I was going through, no matter where they're from. As the years have gone on and the more I've matured, I've sort of taken an approach where I don't care who it is now. As long as they're nice people and they're doing good in the world, I'll be friends with you. I will, connect with you. I'd rather connect with people who are the same mindset as me, no matter if you're Irish or you're from Greece or wherever you're from. But I still feel like people still go into those little groups. And even today, like a lot of groups that are set up are towards like Irish people or British people or, Americans. They all have their own groups.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's just natural. It's a natural comfort zone. And at the beginning, I didn't really want to get involved with all that. I just wanted to see the world and experience the actual true Australia rather than go down to Coogee and live there and never leave. But over the years, I've mellowed and I feel like, to be honest, it probably isn't that bad thing. I probably was more like, let's not go down that road. And then now I'm like, well, it's nice to have those communities because it makes people feel safe and wanted and helps them on their journey because they're experiencing the same type of experience.
I remember when I first moved there, I was like, the American expat group, no, thank you. Like,
Yeah.
I'm good.
Yeah.
And then later
No
down the
thanks.
track, it's like you said, you like mature or you just
Mm.
settle into whatever stage of the process of being an expat is. And you're like, wait, as long as you're cool and you're a nice person and you like to go hiking, I like to go hiking, let's go. I don't care where you're from.
Yeah.
And so you mentioned a part of this process of you maturing into your journey as an expat, and you've spoken about your landing there and being homesick, and then kind of now you're at this stage. Can you talk a little bit of what it's like now, like after 12 years of being an expat? What does it feel like, and what's your life like now after being so rooted there?
Yeah, I still feel obviously like anybody does whenever they go here. I suppose like it's a home. It does feel like home. But again, in my head, I think that a part of the acceptance phase at the end of this whole journey was like, it doesn't matter where I am, I still have two homes and I will always have two homes no matter where I live. But I guess the journey has taught me so many things along the way. Like there's been ups and downs, and I could tell you how many times I've been in hospital, and like there's so many things that can happen in your life. But as long as you have those good supportive people along with the ride, I think it makes it a better experience. I think as I've matured, Sydney feels more like a home, and it's got to the point where I mean, I could live here for a long term and retire at home, or I could go the other way, go home and then retire here. Like there's no set boundaries anymore. Whereas before, in my head, I had
Mm-hmm.
them set, and this is home, and I cannot think of this. I think as you mature, you kind of get rid of those boundaries and you go with the flow. Whatever feels right in the moment. I always believe whatever's for you will never pass you by, and I think anything that's come into my life or anything I go to do, it was meant for me because that was the way it was meant to be. Because it wouldn't have come into my life, and it wouldn't have if I hadn't have gravitated to it, I wouldn't have wanted to do it. Now I see being an expat as a good thing. Before I found it really difficult, obviously, because you go through all those emotions. But I didn't have any information, and I think that's why it led me to right now, where I'm putting out all this content on Instagram and the blog, and I put out a new ultimate guide to move to Australia. Just because I just felt like anytime I talked to people over the years, they had no clue where to go, or they had some clue, but they didn't know exactly where to look. And I feel like now I'm trying to think like, well, I need to use that to help more people because I would hate to be in the same situation that I was, no idea where to meet people because we didn't have the technology back then either. There was no meetup apps, there was no whatever. Now there is all these things. There's all these groups on Instagram, and shout out to Lost and Found in Sydney, Melbourne, and Perth, because they've been instrumental in helping me settle more, especially as I've got to this new stage of being an expat where I'm a bit more comfortable in my skin, a bit more comfortable in being here. Because it always is uncomfortable as an expat because you're forced from well, sometimes you're forced, but you go to like a place and you're forced to get all these like new things, and sometimes it's a bit uncomfortable, and
Mm-hmm.
it's not always what you want, but it's what you've chosen. And I think there's like a couple of different things in there that you have to work out for yourself. But I have to say though, I do love being an expat, and I couldn't have changed my life without being here. And I think hindsight is always 2020. Like now, I'm thinking I'm so glad I made this choice to be here. Completely changed my life and in such a good way. But maybe like 5, 6 years ago, I would have been like, oh, like what have I done?
Right,
But
right.
now looking back, a more mature lens on the glasses, I'm like, wow, if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't have been where I am.
Yeah, and it's just such props to you for taking that leap and then pushing through, or not maybe so much pushing, but navigating through those
Yeah,
challenging
navigating.
times, and
It's a
and
good word.
and seeking your tribe of people. And so you mentioned that you created the ultimate guide to moving to Australia. Did I say that right?
Yeah, yeah,
It's a new ebook, right? Can you explain
yeah,
a little bit about that?
yeah. Sure. So I wanted to create a few different resources that would help people navigate how to get here easily, because I felt like a lot of my problems at the beginning were all because there was no information out there. There was no groups. There was no information of being an expat. There was no how do I get a job? How do I do tax file number? You all had to just figure it out yourself. And over the years, obviously listening to people's complaints, listening to people's views and things, I thought, well, why not create something myself which was like super comprehensive between travel, working holiday. The book contains everything. It's like 250 pages. It's like,
Oh
you know,
my God. Wow.
yeah, it took months to do, but it's just a resource from anybody from working holiday visa, how to get jobs, skilled work, how to do a lot of the stuff yourself, because a lot of people out there go, pay me to do it. And I'm like, mate, you can do that for free. So I'm
Yeah.
telling people, this is where you go for free. I give you the stuff of where and how to do it yourself so that you don't have to pay people to do it. But then I also throw in information, you know, travel tips, how to save money, how to make more money. I just go through everything, and there's just so much in the book that it's hard to put into words.
Oh, I'm so excited.
Yeah,
I like just
thank
want to,
you.
I just want to read it just for my past self and be like, wow, how
Yeah.
amazing. So I'll definitely link in the show notes to
Oh,
that. I
thank
think
you.
that's going to be it's such an amazing resource. And so since you've based yourself in Sydney for the most part for the last 12 years, have you traveled around to other parts of Australia? Where else have you fallen in love with around the country?
Yeah, look, over the years, I've loved different states. I think that's, you know, yourself, whenever you go traveling, you said you've been all over the place, like traveling with your husband, and you really gravitate towards places that I think in certain times of your life. When I was younger, I would have said, oh, I love Melbourne, you know, and then I'm like, ooh, the weather. Now I'm like, oh, Queensland. But I traveled to Perth in Western Australia last October. And I just want to shout out that thank you to Fly Like Rye on Instagram, who has been teaching me how to use points, like Flickr and Flyer points. Because I mean,
Oh,
I wish I had
cool.
done this years ago, but just recently have got into it again. And I think I went to Perth for about 250 Australian, which is about 800 and 900 regular flight price. Was able to travel there and enjoy a week's holiday, and it was just unreal. Unreal. I couldn't put it into words because it was like, you know, there's so many things to see and do. That the beaches were amazing. There was a shipwreck on the beach, like in a residential street. Like it was amazing. And I think every parts of the process, I suppose, over the last 13, 12 years, there's been places where I've liked more, but that's my top one at the moment.
In and around Perth, that's your favorite
Yeah,
right now?
yeah, I
Yeah,
think so.
we went all the way through WA and Western
Oh wow.
Australia for like 3 weeks, and we based ourselves around Perth, and then just did trips all around. And if when we go back to visit family in Sydney, we're gonna spend a couple days in Sydney, and then be like, we're heading out to Perth. You guys can come visit us
Yeah,
because it's just so amazing. It's so underrated. It's
I
so
know.
underrated.
Did you ever get to Rottnest Island?
Yeah, we did Rottnest.
Oh,
Yeah,
that was amazing. I just stayed there
but
for
we
two.
didn't stay. I was gonna say
Oh,
you stayed there. Oh,
mm,
cool.
do it. Even if the weather's good, you will have an amazing time. The waters are like clear crystal blue. The island's walkable. You know, you can cycle if you want. Like it's unreal.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. Because when we went for a day trip, and there was all these little families in the little cottages
Mm,
around the island,
yeah.
and I was like, one day we'll come back here with kids one
Mm.
day, because it just seemed like it's like a summer camp on steroids.
It was, yeah. It was so good.
That's awesome, amazing. So yeah, I always love asking because people always think Australia and they think Sydney and they think Great Barrier Reef, and I always try to say there's so many amazing places. There's Byron Bay and Yamba, there's Burleigh Heads and Noosa, and
You've been to
there's
more than me.
the but the south coast of Sydney,
Oh,
south coast of New South
yeah.
Wales is stunning. It's just
Stunning.
it's there's so much to see in this country, and it's so diverse, and the geography, the animals, the people, there's just so much to learn from,
Yeah.
that I just think you could spend your whole life and not even scratch the surface. So
Yeah, it's like the animals are either really cute and cuddly or they're like really dangerous. It's like
yeah, and the really dangerous ones you can't ever see. They're like, this one will
yeah,
kill you in 2 minutes, and but you won't see
never
it.
see it.
You're
No.
like, great, thanks.
Yeah, because I was thinking I'm going to see spiders here for like all the time, everywhere. These huge, like the size of my hand spiders, and I think I've maybe seen 3 in 13 years. I feel like people, even when I'm going different states and going through hikes, you really don't see that many. I feel people kind of like hype it up, like you could die. That's why I would never go. I'm like, you could die in your own country. Come on, you
Yeah.
need to get out there and see it.
Yeah,
You know.
I mean, that's what people say a lot about, the US. A lot of Americans are like, that XYZ place is very dangerous. And I'm like,
Mm.
we live near
Yeah,
Miami. Like, are you
yeah,
kidding me?
yeah.
We're in
You're like,
Florida right now. Do you know what's going on here?
yeah,
So, it's like you said, it's like those going way back to the beginning of the conversation. It's sometimes other people's fears about the outside world or other people's uncomfortable zones there, like when they don't get outside of their comfort zone. I saw a graphic today actually that showed 3 rings, and the first little ring was comfort zone, and then the next ring out was the fear zone, and then the next ring out was amplified, and it said the growth zone. And so you truly don't grow or be able to see what that next level of your life or that next level of who you can be if you don't take that step out of your comfort zone into an unfamiliar, fearful place potentially. And then from that place you grow. And it sounds like to me what you were saying earlier is your life has just blossomed exponentially because of a risk that you took stepping out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, and I mean those years really change you. Like as you just said, it amplifies your life. I feel I don't know, this is a word that I probably use sometimes, is self-actualization is like reaching your full potential. And I feel like I'm always motivated and striving to reach that peak of my life. And
Mm.
all these things, those hard times and everything, those you have to have resilience and grit to get there. But they have pushed me to get closer to that point. And the only way to get to that point is being uncomfortable. You cannot get there without being with being comfortable. There's no way. Like if you look at all the research and stuff like that, a lot of the people who reach those self-actualization, like those top CEOs, have all experienced bankruptcy or some hard times in their life. They've grown up poor or with no money and like been on welfare. A lot of those people have all had struggle to get there, and that's where I feel like I have to reach. There's all this internal motivation to get there, and I feel like as expats, you're on that course to get there if you push yourself out there, and that's the pinnacle of why I guess I'm doing what I'm doing now, is because I feel like you need to help as many people get there as possible, because the more people that are able to fully reach their potential, the more people they can help, the more people that they can give back to. And that's the whole reason why I guess you're doing what you're doing and I'm doing what I'm doing. We all want to help people push themselves further than they've ever gone before.
Yeah, we always say on our retreats that we're lovingly encouraging people to find their edge and
Yeah.
find their growth point. And I just appreciate you doing your work and
Can I just say
encouraging people.
that retreat in Costa Rica looked amazing, by the way.
Oh, well,
Love
you're
it.
coming to the next one.
I wish. Thank you.
Yeah. Of course. And so, yeah, I'm excited for people to connect with you. And as soon as I get questions a lot about Australia, just traveling there or moving there, and I'll definitely point them in your direction. So I
thank you.
appreciate it so much. Yeah. And so I finish all these episodes with rapid fire questions related to travel. So
Go.
we'll see what comes up. All right. So number 1 is, if you could only go back to one country or place in the world, where would it be and why? And I think I'm going to have to ask you to take Australia off the list because it's your home.
Yeah. Ooh, I would say Philippines,
Oh, cool.
because it was probably the most outrageous holiday ever. It was just so much fun, and it was cheap. The people were lovely, and there's so much to see and do, and I don't think I even reached the surface, and I would love to go back.
Philippines is kind of like Greece. I haven't been to the Philippines, so I'm just assuming, but it's kind of like Greece where you could travel there for your entire life and still not
Yeah.
see every island and every place. It's just so much to do. So that's
Yeah.
definitely on my list for sure. And so number 2 is, what's next on your bucket list?
Oh, okay. South America. I think I want to do South America or Greece, because those are like, Greece is obviously closer to home, like the other home, but South America is what I want to do next if I can.
Cool. So then number 3 is, what's the biggest life lesson you've learned through traveling?
Ooh, always to follow your heart, and also you always know what's right for you at the moment that you really 100% need it.
Go with your gut. I love that.
Yeah.
And then the last one, number 4, is, what piece of advice would you give to a beginner traveler or someone who just really wants to get out of their comfort zone, get out of their hometown? What would you tell them?
Start off with something that you're looking forward to or is on a list to achieve. Because I feel like once you achieve something, you can see the benefits of that, even if it's going to the next state or going overseas. Because a lot of people, I think there was like a lot of statistics of people who haven't been even overseas yet. Even in America, they haven't even been to the next state. Why not go to the next state? Why not go to another country and then see, how you like it, or maybe it's a bucket list, tick something off, and then you'll feel that sense of reward and that sense of accomplishment. And then maybe that'll lead to something even more bigger in the next time you go.
Yeah, it's like building confidence, like baby steps in some way. I really like that.
And especially solo travel can be very confronting if you're by yourself. I have only recently done solo travel because a lot of people shy away from solo travel, but I think it's the best thing I ever did because no time limit. People aren't telling you where to go and what to do. I actually found it so much more freeing when I went and did solo travel.
Yeah, that's solo travel isn't really something that I've delved a lot into, because when I really started traveling, I was with a group through college, and then I met my husband, and so we've just been traveling together ever since. But when I do get my little glimpses on the business trips and stuff like that, I'm like, oh, I can choose what I want and what I do. Yeah. I love it. Well, thank you so much for sharing your time with us and for continuing to share all the resources. I'd love for you to be able to connect with our community, so please let us know how we can connect with you online, where they can find all your resources.
Yeah, sure. So you can connect with me on Instagram, Average Joe Down Under. Pretty simple. So obviously Average Joe is basically, I thought I was average when I came here, and don't feel so average anymore. But you can also Google that and Average Joe Down Under, and you'll find my website, which is actually a bit different. It's darrenjonathon.com. And then you can find all the blogs. The podcast is also on there, Average Joe Down Under. And you can find everything you need in those 3 resources.
Incredible. And so the podcast, you're interviewing expats, right?
Yeah, so it's a bit about expats, also like expat stories, and maybe throwing in there some like tips and tricks about being here, along with how to move here and whether you're teaching your physio or whatever career, those kind of expats have, and we'll focus on those as well.
Yeah, that's super cool, because then that gives like further social proof that it's possible. There's other people doing it, and that there's, getting to hear different stories, I think helps people as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I think lived experiences always tells you there's proof in the pudding. You can do it no matter if you come from nothing or whether you came here and you didn't have a job for 3 months, how you can do it. There's so many stories out there.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your time, and we will speak soon, I'm sure.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Transform with Travel podcast. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss an episode of inspiration, adventure, and exploration. If you felt inspired by this episode, please rate and review in whatever streaming app you're listening from. This allows us to spread the word even more and continue to serve up weekly doses of adventure. As always, we'd love if you could share the episode with someone in your life who you think will benefit from this conversation. Thanks so much for listening. This is your reminder to get out there and keep on exploring.